Chef Yudhika Sujanani is a firm believer that Indian cuisine offers endless possibilities, and her innovative recipes offer the proof. This week, she shows just what is possible when you pair old favorites like seafood and lionfish with the right choice of spices.
I find ways to incorporate spices to most of the dishes I prepare. I also enjoy adding a touch of spice to the desserts and cakes I bake too. Knowing and understanding your spices can transform the simplest meals into an exotic eating experience. I'm doing just that in the kitchen today. On the menu, oven-baked prawns. We've got a seafood biryani with fresh lionfish and crayfish. And for dessert, that exotic spiced jalebi cake flavored with a bit of saffron. Quite simply, cake flour going into the mixing bowl. To that, some sugar, baking powder, and some salt. I've got some soft butter, and pop that in, and work the ingredients together until you get a sandy consistency. It's important not to overwork the ingredients or you'll end up with quite a heavy cake. You want a soft, light sponge for this. Now we're going to add milk, and just pour that in. 2 eggs going into. You can use saffron strands infused in a bit of hot water for this recipe, but I prefer using the saffron essence. And the moment I pop open the lid, this aroma takes me back in time to having hot jalebis as a child. Let's beat this on low until the ingredients come together to form a smooth batter. The batter's ready. And again, using a spatula, make sure the ingredients are properly combined. There's nothing worse than having raw bits of batter in the cake that you're trying so hard to perfect. And now pour some of this batter into a bowl. To tint the batter, some red food coloring going in, touch of egg yellow going in as well. Let's have a look and see what that does. Beautiful orange batter. I think that's going to be perfect. And now to create the jalebi spiral, I'm using a 20 centimeter greased and lined baking tin. Add 2 scoops of the cream batter into the baking tin and add 2 orange ones into the baking tin as well. And when you slice through this cake, you're going to have an orange and cream colored stripe coming through. You can see the cream and orange layers coming through, and I'm already excited. This is such a festive cake and one of my favorites. Bake this off in a preheated oven at 170 degrees Celsius. While the cake's in the oven, let's get started on the biryani. We've got some of the classical biryani ingredients here. And of course, we've got our fresh fish, and I've fried that off already with a hint of chili powder and some turmeric as well. I just love seafood, and today I'm combining crayfish with the lionfish. And if you don't have crayfish, you could also use prawns or langoustines, or if you feel like a simple fish biryani, just leave it at that. Let's start out with some sunflower oil into the pan. And add a bay leaf, cinnamon stick, and cumin seeds. Seafood's quite delicate, so you don't want to overpower the flavor by using too many whole spices. Pop the onion in. A generous handful of curry leaves. And to this, salt. Saute the onion until light golden in color. Brown onion gives you the best flavor. That looks good. The aroma is incredible. Ginger and garlic paste going in on the side of the pan. Mix that in. You can actually use some green chili for this recipe, but I find it difficult to gauge how hot they are, so I'd rather leave them out and stick with red chili powder. About 3 heaped spoons of red chili going in. Mix that in. Not more than 3 to 5 seconds of heat, and in goes the tomato. Use ripe, soft tomatoes for this recipe. You can grate them or blitz them in a food processor. Just remove the skins first. Let's spice it up. Cumin going in, some coriander, garam masala, and turmeric. Mix that through. I'm using roasted spices in this recipe, and I don't need to fry them off in the oil to release flavor. The oil does start to separate, and we want the moisture to evaporate so the tomato starts to roast in the pan, and then we're going to add a touch of water to reconstitute the sauce. To this, pour in the fresh cream, You could also use coconut milk in this recipe and add some lemongrass and lime leaves as well for that exotic Thai flavor. For the fish, place the fried fish into the creamy sauce and the crayfish going in. I've left these little tails on, and that's to add flavor to the sauce. They are quite large, just coiling them up a bit. The crayfish tails take just minutes to cook, which is why I also fried the fish to cut down on the cooking time. Now to layer the biryani, switch off the heat. Brown lentils. I'm going to reserve a few just for the top of the rice. We've got rice going in, and this is cold rice, remaining brown lentils going on top. Little scoops of butter over the rice. Egg yellow food coloring to tint the grains of rice. Now traditionally turmeric was used. I find little drops of egg yellow tint the rice beautifully from shades of pale yellow to deep orange. Brown onion adds a lovely flavor to the rice. I'm going to use some crisp onion when I serve as well. And the last spice. I've ground some biryani mix here with cumin, coriander, cardamom pods and cloves. A little more water. Cover the pan with a tight-fitting lid and let this steam over a low heat for about 10 minutes. The cake should be ready. It's been in the oven for about 35 minutes. Let's take a look. That looks lovely. Just check the cake. When you press down, it should spring back. It shouldn't leave a dent. I'm going to take the cake to cool and get my ingredients for the oven-baked prawn. This is a simple recipe. I've actually arranged the prawns into an oven-proof dish. I'm going to top it with a decadent garlic cream sauce and bake it with some parmesan in a hot oven. Let's start with the butter going into the pan. Melt the butter over a medium heat, not too hot. We don't want the butter to burn. Add the garlic, and once the garlic hits the pan and the butter, it releases a beautiful aroma. 1 green chili going in. We don't want it too hot. A teaspoon of red chili powder going in. Fry that off gently for a few seconds and pour in the fresh cream. This looks like quite a milky mess, but it's going to thicken quite quickly. And add some parmesan. Remember, parmesan has a fair bit of salt in it, so season this lightly. We don't want the prawn to become too salty. Black pepper. I love lots of black pepper in my food. Bring it up to the boil and stir. You don't want a very thick sauce for this. Remember, it's still going to bake in the oven, which tends to dry it out a bit. It's coming along nicely. Let's bring the prawn in. I've shelled and deveined this prawn. I have lazy seafood eaters in my home, but you can leave the shell on for the best flavor. Let's pour this over the prawn. Let's get all that black pepper in. Shake it about a bit, just to make sure the prawns are submerged in this lovely sauce. You can use any rub or fragrant spice going on top. I'm using some chili flakes with ground cumin and coriander, and some parmesan. Sprinkle that over. Last bits of parmesan going on top. Pop this into a hot oven, 200 degrees Celsius, for about 10 minutes. I'm finishing this cake with a simple cream cheese frosting, and I've got a single layer here. It's actually a slice cake. So scoop some of the cream cheese frosting onto the top and sides of the cake. Need a little more. I'm using a plain frosting for this. I haven't spiced it up, but you could add some cardamom. Remember, we've got that saffron sponge, and too much saffron can be a bit overpowering. Almonds, I've tinted these with red food coloring and dusted them with gold. It's starting to look really festive. Very, very beautiful. These are homemade jalebis, and they are super crisp. Lovely texture as well. You can just stack that onto the cake. I love a high pile of jalebis. I've got the syrup here. Drizzle a little of that over the cake. And you want a little going over the sides as well, just to tease and tempt. A few more almonds. And that is our Jalebi saffron cake. Dessert's done, prawns should be ready. Let's plate up. Some fresh coriander going on top. And let's check on the prawns. Ah, those look lovely. They're beautiful, bubbling and hot. Rip up some coriander for the top. I've used just a few spices to create the dishes on today's menu. We've got oven-baked prawns with a hint of red chili powder. We've got a few Indian spices going into the seafood biryani with lionfish and crayfish. And for dessert, the saffron in the jalebi spiced cake. The moral of this menu is get to know your spices. We've taken just a few and created this exotic feast.